I'm not.
We're gonna start. Just do an introduction, who you are, what you're running for.
Okay. My name is Richard DeBolt. I'm running for the 20th District House of Representatives, position 1. Is that correct? Okay, got it right.
There you go. We'll start right off with education. How should the legislature go about satisfying the Supreme Court? And is $2 billion a fair estimate?
Okay, so I don't think there's a money amount that you can place on how we satisfy the Supreme Court. One, I think the court overstepped its bounds by telling the legislature what they can do with basic education and put a mandate on them, find us in contempt of court. I kind of believe that maybe we should let the courts go be partisan and kind of state their future, because if they want to play politics, they can do that. So we have this big water bill. It's called Washington Water. It fixes floods for Lewis County. And what we've done in the bill is we've made it so it actually helps McCleary with the McCleary decision. Because we're spending around $600 million a biennium on fish and water and flooding damages, that if we actually take that money and we move it out of the capital budget into a bonding system, where we put out this new piece, and I can talk about that later, but what it does do is it frees up $600 million a biennium for class sizes. And you can't go out right now and do what the court wants because we don't have the physical facilities to put K-3 class size improvements in. So you can tell a school like Napavine that they got to reduce class sizes, but they don't have a building. So we have to manage the infrastructure first before we can even start looking at the class size reductions themselves. Long answer.
So you don't. I mean, yeah. So you're saying there's a lot that needs to be done before you talk about money, but they're saying you need to have some answers by the end of this next session.
And I don't think it's hard to have answers, and I actually think that you can make a commitment, but they're saying that they want to put the cart in front of the horse. They want to say that you have to put operating capital behind it, and you can't. You need to put capital dollars behind it, because you have to change your infrastructure before you can change your classes. And anybody who else tells you different, it's a platitude, and they don't understand the system.
But just saying the court stepped out of bounds isn't that a moot point now? I mean, after being found in contempt.
Well, yeah, but then they just did it again on mental health. Mm-hmm. So how many times are they going to do this? Maybe they should just run government. Would that be an oligarchy? Kind of. I'm sorry, we're having
again, though, it's a moot point. I mean, the court made the decision. You can disagree with it and say, I think they overstepped their bounds, yeah. But they've already overstepped.
Right, but we don't have to respond. We don't have to do what the court says. They can't hold us in contempt. It's not constitutionally feasible. You can't arrest the body that funds you, because then you get no funding. The government would cease to exist. The whole thing's ridiculous. Our court is just wrong. I agree that education is paramount duty of Washington State. We've talked about it for a long time. We actually came up with in our caucus 8 years ago with a plan that said fund education first. So you take the first dollars spent in the entire operating budget and put them towards education. If we'd done that, we wouldn't be in this position today. So I agree that we're not doing our paramount duty for education, but to have them lay out an edict that it has to be done this way is just absurd.
Do you think anything will be done this session?
Oh, everybody's all panicked about it, and they'll churn about it, and they'll talk about it. They might cry about it, and then in the long run, probably not. Unless we make the capital budget changes, and the capital budget chair and I met, and we're both committed to doing that. So we're going to try to put out a K-3 infrastructure package that will start making it so we can reduce class sizes for real. But I think there'll be a lot of platitudes. They'll try to pass a tax. The teachers will want smaller class sizes, as they say, but they can't have them, so they'll take a raise instead.
So yeah, this might be a dumb question, but are you going to support any new taxes if that came up, or?
So, for McCleary, as it stands with the package in front of us, I don't think they'll be necessary for taxes. Now, if we put a Washington Water bill together that pulls money and frees up money for the capital budget to go fix the K-12 class sizes, and we need to do something to create a fee to pay for flood reduction and for stormwater infrastructure, I'm probably okay with that.
So you're talking about tying that funding to flooding. That seems like an odd pairing.
It depends on what you find to hitch your wagon to, what you get done.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that? I mean, a kind of new and innovative approach to getting the funding by tying in these other jurisdictions and how that came about and where we're at currently with that?
Well, as you guys know, I've been leader for a long time. So I know how the place works. So I looked at all my stakeholders, and I realized who I needed and how I needed to get there to get the $435 million for flooding for us. And so then I ran a bill, I think last year, for $1.5 billion, right? That would fix flooding in Western Washington. About 69% of the projects basically went through and added up enough votes to get to 52, so I could pass a bill. And then the McCleary thing came down, and I kind of started to look at the picture, and then we had the fish consumption rule pass, and then we had the big irrigation problem we're having with the courts and the water levels in Eastern Washington. So we moved the package to $4 billion, and we have now in there irrigation, flooding, and stormwater fish consumption. And if we do this, then it literally takes all that money out of the capital budget and puts it in its own fund, which will go into local projects, and then it frees up the money we were spending on flood damage. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but we're spending over $200 million a year on fish riparian area flood damage. Just damage. Not fixing it so it doesn't flood anymore, but just repairing the damage. So you take all that money that we were spending on damage and you leave it alone, and now it can go into education. So now you don't need taxes for education. So that's how I came up with the nexus there. I'm still trying to explain it to the governor.
Mm-hmm. I would think so.
But the legislature gets it.
Mm-hmm.
The Senate and the House get it. But he wants revenue, so.
You, what's your level of confidence in actually being able to get that money this session for the flooding issues? And I realize there's a lot of caveats to that. It could be a lot less money.
I'm good with that. So I believe that that bill will pass this year, 70%. It's about as confident as I can be.
Mm-hmm.
I had a stakeholder meeting last week with all my folks. The Senate now agrees. We've reached a price. We're out talking to people on financing infrastructures, whether we want to bond it or use cash. We're looking at giving local authorities bonding capacity. My only thing is this bill has gotten so, it's going to be probably the largest water policy bill done in history. And I just have to make sure somewhere in there that we get taken care of. That if you have a flood solution that has been agreed to by multiple jurisdictions and multiple stakeholder groups that's in a top 3 large flood basins and that has a governor's task force with oversight, that your project goes first. And right now it's still there. And so I just didn't want it to get too big that it got unwieldy. And the Senate has agreed to moving something and the House has agreed to moving something. And so I think we got a good chance, better than I ever thought I would.
It's not unwieldy at that size. I don't know when it would be unwieldy. $4 billion?
It was. They wanted, if I bought off all the stakeholders, it would be like $6 billion.
$6 billion.
And so we couldn't do that. And you got to understand, though, that flood damage in Washington State alone was $9 billion in the last 2 major events. Okay? So we're spending $9 billion fixing the bridges and the infrastructure problems that we're having. When you add stormwater in, and the lawsuits against the tribe's lawsuits against the state about runoff and stormwater management, we're talking about $25 billion, okay? So I can fix, in liability and lawsuits, $25 billion, $9 billion of flood damage for $3 billion. So that's money ahead that you're freeing up capacity in the state, because we have to pay these things. And we actually get better flood results and better water quality standards for the state of Washington. So right now we're in this litigious behavior where we just watch it happen and then we pay off people for what happened. So instead it's more of a proactive approach, and in the long run it'll save us money. And we're never going to get the feds to come help us, so let's do it ourselves. That was an email in your questionnaire, wasn't it?
It's good though.
Okay.
I'll shift away from flooding for at least a minute. Rob Snoz was in here yesterday and we were talking about marijuana, and he was saying, it'd be nice to get some more direction from the legislature on that law. What's your opinion on that, and do you think anything will be done?
So I don't know. I mean, it's the will of the people. Initiatives are initiatives. I get that. There are issues with. I think there were 1,000 questions when it passed that we had to get answered. Now we're down to 100, but it's the 100 hard ones. We're out of compliance with the federal government. Can we mandate a local government to do it? Are you taxing it beyond the price break point where it's still underground economy? What are you doing about the medical marijuana? What are you doing about the oils and the homemade oils that people use for epilepsy? I mean, just and I'm not even on the committee, and I know all these problems.
Right.
And so it will tell you that it's got a ways to cook, to bake. I was going to say bake, but I thought that was not good.
A little too blunt.
Like that one.
Yeah, there was the idea yesterday in the paper about the ban on marijuana in vehicles. Is that, if that law came up, is that something you'd support? Or?
So here's the thing. Either marijuana is legal or it's not. Just like coal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Either coal's legal or it's not. But no one's even talking about the ionization of marijuana, vapor cigarette marijuana. So you're going to have odorless, tasteless, vaporized marijuana products on the market, they say, within 6-8 months, right? How are you going to regulate that? So instead of putting all these caveats that make people criminals, you already broke open the gate, so you need to figure out to do with what you've done. I mean, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. And so I don't know how you enforce. Now, if somebody's, smoking in their car with their kids, is that illegal? Is it
Should be.
child endangerment? No, I mean the cigarette.
Oh, I got you.
Okay, so if they're drinking in their car, it's illegal. So shouldn't it be illegal for them to smoke marijuana in their car? Because it's a altering substance. So I don't know. I'll go with Snozzy. Whatever Snozzy decides, I'm good. 'Cause he's the one that has to enforce it. I mean, we should leave law enforcement to make some of these decisions, don't you think?
Yeah. Just your opinion, and maybe you just answered it, but do you think a local jurisdiction should be able to ban recreational marijuana?
I'm all for local government, whatever they want to do. Especially when you're in violation with the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
For the state to tell local governments that they're supposed to be in violation with the federal government, I think that's silly. Now, if we weren't in violation with the federal government and the Attorney General Holder sent us a letter saying you're in compliance with the federal government, and then the state wanted to tell local government what to do, then you have more of a case. But we actually got a letter to the opposite, right? From the feds saying marijuana is not legal. We're not going to enforce it on you. We're not going to withhold funds on you, but it's still illegal. So as a local government, I think now you have jurisdiction over that. So, because the 10th Amendment kind of gives you that protection.
You kind of stepped away from the main leadership post. How's that changed your life in the legislature?
It's been really good. Have you guys ever ridden a bullet train?
No.
Or a high-speed rail? Okay, when you get on the train, it's kind of like the roller coaster too, I guess. When you get on the train, it takes off, and you're like, whoo, that's a rush, right? And you're going, and then after a while, you get used to it. And you don't even realize how fast you're going and all the things that are going on in your life. And then when you get off, you realize, wow, that was quite the ride, and you don't really want to get back on it. That's from Office Space. It took me a while. I know that company.
The Office?
Yeah, The Office, yeah. So I would tell you that it's made me more appreciative of my district being leader. I mean, they let me be leader for a long time, and didn't have the ability to work on localized projects because as leader you can't want anything. So from that perspective, I'm enjoying being a policymaker again. I was going to leave altogether, and I got talked out of that by some folks in my leadership team to stay around for a little while and kind of be the kinder, gentler statesman of the group to help them to move forward. And so that's been fun. And I'm enjoying working with both sides of the aisle. I'm grappling with this poverty thing. We're grappling with this flood thing. Fish consumption, I've got some really big issues that I get to take care of. And I like that. And so it's a nice way for me to, kind of go off and do this stuff.
Do you still, you were talked back into going back in, do you see yourself in the legislature for a while? I mean, I have no idea.
Yeah, right now I just want to fix flooding.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I'm going to sit down, we're going to have a family meeting, and we're going to reevaluate everything. But right now I'm going to fix flooding because I'm in a position where I've got, I think, the chits, I know the process, I know the people. I think I have, if anybody's ever going to have a clear and concise vision of enacting what the flood district decides and knows how to do it, this is the time and place to do it. Like everything's lined up for this.
with campaign contributions being a very large focus for your opponent, does he have a point? And do you think special interests dictate what happens in the legislature, at least to a certain degree?
Yes, it does to a certain degree because we all have special interests. He's a special interest person. He has special interests, doesn't he? He might be a model railroadist for all we know.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody comes from the legislature from a point of conflict and a point of, what's the word we use? Not special interest, but it's when you, it's not conflict, what is the word I'm looking for? People tell you you can't do that because you're biased. Okay, we'll use the word
That
biased.
works.
Okay. So everybody has a point of bias. We have teachers in the legislature, we have lawyers in the legislatures, we have media people in the legislature, we have citizens in the legislature, we have union people in the legislature. You don't want somebody growing up in a box with no influences on them whatsoever, and then you pop them out of the box and put them in Olympia. You have to have somebody who's lived a life, and so if you live life and if you're involved in things, then yes, you develop an opinion. And to him, I think an opinion is special interest. Because he disagrees with it, he chooses to label it differently. But our political process is what it is. It's one of the best in the world. To tell somebody that they can't contribute or take contributions from people that agree with them or are like-minded, I think is not very logical. I think our system works very well. Bob Dingenthal, he takes money from people who agree with him. Jamie Rare takes money from people who agree with her. I've never ever had in my life or in my career anybody come to say to me, we gave you money, so vote that way. I don't think that happens. I think people have more integrity than that. So I think everybody comes from a perspective and a bias, and so is my opponent. And he wants to do it without money. That's up to him. And he's trying to make a point. I don't think our election system's for sale at all. At all. It's just you have to communicate with voters. And it costs money to communicate with voters. It's not like the politicians get rich off this.
I don't know with all those per diems.
I don't take per diem.
No?
No.
There we go. Answered that. I have one more question for you. You're like right on schedule. So
Thank you.
It's like you've done this before.
And I talk fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions they want to throw out?
Do you guys remember when the guy sat here and talked about running naked to the woods smoking Maui Wowie? Still my favorite interview of all time.
That was
Hysterical.
entertaining.
Yeah, we even showed that in my caucus. Who was that? What was his name? He ran against Swecker.
Yeah, former state trooper. What was his name?
I don't remember.
Great interview, by the way. If I can ever do that good, if I can go off the deep end like that, I just want it sent to my house. I want to watch it every weekend.
Yours will hit the wire though right afterwards when you say it. So final question. This one will be harder for you than anyone else who's been in office so long. What's one thing people don't know about you?
God, you guys print everything. What's one thing I do hot yoga. Yeah, since I got sick.
We did not know that.
Yeah, since I was sick, I've taken up hot yoga, and I enjoy that.
I think that's the most surprising one so far. So.
Yeah, so that's a fun one, huh? So what was my opponent's?
What was his? He enjoys biking.
Oh,
Canoeing.
Canoeing, yeah, it was canoeing. It was canoeing.
All right, so we just saw Nick Offerman.
We're done.
Oh, yeah.
by the way.
I was gonna say, are we off the record now?